March 4, 2025, a US MQ-9 Reaper drone cruises 25,000 feet above the Red Sea, running a quiet ISR loop. Its mission: track shipping routes, scan heat signatures, and off the record, keep an eye on western Yemen. Standard stuff. But today wasn't standard. At 0842 local time, the Reaper onboard sensors detected something off.
A heat plume, then another.
2 missile launches from somewhere near Al-Huda.
They're fast. Too fast.
The Reaper deploys flares.
Classic decoy move. No dice.
1 missile burns straight through, tracks the engine, and hits home.
Boom.
$30 million worth of American hardware spirals into the water in a flaming arc. Minutes later, the Houthi rebels post grainy video footage showing flaming wreckage and charred wings. They claim responsibility. Loud, proud, triumphant. Meanwhile, back in Washington, radio silence. The Pentagon refuses to confirm anything. Reporters get a standard line: "We're aware of the situation." But out at sea, the real conversation had already started. Because while the Houthis were busy celebrating online, US commanders were watching something else. The live feed the Reaper had sent back before it went dark. Coordinates, thermal data, radar echoes, enough for a playbook. And the moment that drone hit the water, a decision was already made. This wouldn't end with a crash. It would start with one. The drone was hit, but the US wasn't blind because the Reaper wasn't flying solo that day. Roughly 40 nautical miles northeast, an F-16 from the 421st Fighter Squadron was flying top cover. High-altitude combat loadout running Overwatch on the patrol zone. Nearby, a second MQ-9 loitered further offshore, sweeping for radar emissions. The moment the first Reaper went down, both aircraft caught the heat signature. Missile trail, smoke bloom, then radio chatter. Reaper 2 is down. Confirmed impact. From the sky, they could already see the crash point just off the Yemen coastline. But that wasn't the part that made the commander sit up. It was what came next. The Reaper's final transmission didn't just say we've been hit. It sent back a full telemetry package, coordinates of the launch, radar spikes from a nearby battery, and what analysts would later confirm as SA-6 or SC-80 class missile emissions. That one final moment, it was gold. While the Houthi video went viral inside CENTCOM, screens were lighting up. The drone's kill confirmed more than just an attack. It revealed a precise launch point. And it wasn't random. That spot had been quiet for weeks. Today, it roared to life just long enough to fire and then tried to vanish.
Didn't matter.
The USS Eisenhower had already flagged the telemetry and pushed it to a satellite relay. By the time the drone hit the ocean, the Navy had eyes on where the fire came from and what was standing nearby. Because now it wasn't about surveillance anymore. It was about payback. When a US drone goes down, people notice. When it transmits targeting data as it's dying, people move. Less than 20 minutes after the impact, the USS Dwight D, Eisenhower's Combat Information Center, had locked in on the coordinates. Heat signatures, radar pings, and telemetry timestamps were synced with satellite surveillance. The launch site was no longer a ghost. It was a red dot glowing on every screen. In a secure conference room 3 decks down, operations officers stood around a digital map. The captain didn't need to raise his voice. "Package Bravo, prep it." Now, that phrase alone flipped the carrier from passive to predatory. Package Bravo isn't routine. It's not some flyby warning shot. It's a full multi-phase retaliatory strike. Privet, standing by, just waiting for a reason. Well, the Houthis had just given them one. By the 40-minute mark, carrier deck crews were already wheeling out jams and harm missiles. Pilots were being pulled from bunks and briefed. Nobody needed convincing. They'd seen the feed. They watched the Reaper die in real time. One officer later said, "It wasn't just a drone. It was a message to us." So, we wrote one back. Final coordinates were loaded into strike packages. Intel confirmed the site was still hot. No signs it had been fully evacuated. If they moved fast, they hit more than just dirt. Meanwhile, on a nearby Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, VLS cells unlocked. Tomahawk missiles were loaded and armed. Overhead, an E-2D Hawkeye circled into position to guide the incoming wave. And somewhere behind the clouds, Growlers were already jamming Houthi comms, muddying the water. No press releases, no leaks, just metal, fuel, and intent. Because this wasn't going to be a political response. This was going to be mechanical, surgical, and loud. And for the men and women on board those jets, they weren't flying into Yemen. They were flying into closure. Back on the Truman's deck, The night lit up like a thunderstorm made of steel. Within minutes of the green light, the flight deck was moving like a machine. Only this machine breathed, barked orders, and moved 70,000 pounds of jet fuel and warheads like it was muscle memory. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower may be the flagship, but the Truman, also in the region, had the birds ready to fly. Flight crews worked in silence, except for sharp commands. Overhead, an E-2D Hawkeye spun up and launched first, eyes in the sky. But just behind it, a pair of EA-18G Growlers taxied toward the catapults, ready to jam enemy radar and blind any early warning systems that might still be alive. Then came the birds with the teeth. Each Hornet roared down the catapult, flung off the deck with afterburners screaming. The launch cadence was brutal. One jet every 30 seconds. The night sky over the Red Sea turned into an outbound warpath. Meanwhile, aboard a nearby Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, hatches opened with a hydraulic hiss. Vertical launch systems came alive. Inside each, a Tomahawk cruise missile programmed and primed. The destroyer's radar pinged steady, watching the sky for trouble. But tonight, it was their turn to send something back. Within seconds, the first Tomahawk roared skyward. Then another, then another. A multi-domain strike package was officially airborne. From the sea, from the sky, from the dark. And the message was simple. You hit a drone, we bring the swarm. The swarm was coming. And it wasn't subtle. First contact came at just after 0200 local time. A mobile launch platform outside Al-Houthi lit up briefly on thermal. Seconds later, it lit up permanently. Detonated by a J-dam dropped from 25,000 feet. Secondary explosion confirmed. Munitions were stored nearby. The Houthis didn't stand a chance. Their eyes were shut, their ears were deafened, and their hands too slow. Then came the hammer. Wave 2 brought the rest of the strike package down on a suspected drone warehouse tucked inside a civilian industrial zone. Precision strikes only.
No collateral. But the building's gone.
Multiple secondary pops echoed for minutes. Fuel, explosives, electronics, whatever they were hiding. One of the last targets was the most important. A known command bunker dug into the Hills of Roses. Buried deep, camouflaged, didn't matter. The final Tomahawk hit it dead center, sending a shock wave across the sand. Surveillance drones overhead caught the moment the bunker doors blew outward. Back on the Truman, pilots reported in. No losses, all targets struck.
Mission complete.
But they didn't cheer.
No high fives, no fist bumps. This wasn't Hollywood. Just quiet nods.
Mission logs updated and aircraft refueled for the next one. Meanwhile, back at CENTCOM, the strike was declared a success. Minimal risk, 0 casualties, multiple HVTs likely neutralized. But the official response, still nothing. The White House stayed silent. No podium, no press release. Because this wasn't just about hitting back. It was about resetting the rules. And for the Houthis, they hadn't just lost a drone launcher, they lost the map. By sunrise, the sky over Yemen was quiet again.
Too quiet.
Satellite images taken. Just hours after the strike showed the truth. Charred buildings, collapsed walls, smoldering debris fields. The command bunker gone. The drone warehouse vaporized. What remained was a trail of blackened targets stretching across 50 square km. But from Washington, not a word. No official statement, no mention in a briefing room. Reporters asked, officials deflected. We continue to monitor regional security developments. Translation: we hit back hard and we're not done watching. Meanwhile in Yemen, the local impact rippled out fast. Witnesses near Al-Houthi described a night of explosions that shook the ground like an earthquake. Civilian infrastructure remained untouched, but fear settled in anyway. Everyone knew what the target had been and who had sent the message. The Houthis scrambled to downplay the damage. State-linked media released doctored photos claiming nothing important was hit, just empty buildings, training areas, routine demolitions.
No one bought it.
Even Iran's press outlets, normally quick to amplify Houthi victories, went quiet. No victory footage, no propaganda montage, just static. Behind the scenes, intercepts revealed internal panic, missed communications, orders rooted, logistics frozen. The streak hadn't just damaged structures, it fractured command flow. And that silence from DC, it was deliberate. Because in war, sometimes words are louder when you don't say them. Letting the images do the talking. Letting the enemy guess if you're done or just getting started. But one thing was clear. This wasn't some slap on the wrist response. This was a cold, calculated demonstration. Precision, speed, 0 losses. The kind of operation that reminds everyone, especially those hiding behind hills and hashtags, that you don't get a free shot at the US's assets.
And if you take one, you better pray it lands.
Because if it doesn't, what comes next is silence. The kind right before the next boom. Before it fell, the Reaper finished its job. See, what most people forget is that the MQ-9 isn't just a flying camera. It's a full-blown spy platform with eyes sharper than anything you'll ever find on Google Earth. And the one that got hit on March 4th, it saw everything. In the final 90 seconds before impact, it locked in a suspicious radar signature rising near the coast east of Al-Huda. Not the usual low-power emissions you'd expect from surveillance radars. No, this one was high-frequency, short-burst, classic for a SAM unit prepping to launch. The Reaper zoomed, pinged, and transmitted live. It captured the exact shape of the launch vehicle, heat trails, power signatures, and directional scans, all in real time, all fed straight back to the carrier strike group's intel cell. Even when it knew it was being hunted, the drone kept filming like a soldier crawling with a radio in hand. And seconds before impacted offloaded a full imagery burst via satellite uplink. One final data package target confirmed, location verified, signature matched to a SC-82 system, an Iranian-made surface-to-air missile launcher.
Boom. The rest we know.
But without that footage, the US strike would have been just a shot in the dark. Instead, it was a scalpel to the chest. Turns out the drone's final act wasn't a failure.
It was a handoff.
And thanks to that feed, the follow-up strike didn't just hit something, it hit the right thing. After the strike, something shifted. This wasn't just a mission accomplished. It was a lever pulled deep inside the US military's escalation ladder. Quietly, firmly, and without headlines, the region flipped into a whole new mode. The first move, the rules of engagement. Previously, US forces in the Red Sea operated under strict defensive posture.
Don't shoot unless they shoot first.
But now, the ROE had a new clause. If it pings, it dies. Any radar signal resembling a fire control system could now be engaged preemptively. Second, the carriers changed how they moved. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and the USS Truman began flying round-clock caps.
Combat air patrol.
Layered fighter coverage designed to swarm any threat before it even crosses the coast. At any given moment, at least 2 FA-18s were circling at altitude, armed and ready. Add to that E-2D Hawkeye scanning from above and MQ-9 sweeping from below.
Third, eyes everywhere.
The Navy deployed MQ-4C Triton drones, high-altitude surveillance beasts capable of loitering for over 24 hours. They weren't hunting targets, they were hunting intent. Any heat bloom, any radar click, any shift in convoy routes inside Houthi territory flagged, tracked, prioritized. Fourth, the launch on detect doctrine. Now that the enemy had proven the willingness to hit US drones with advanced SAMs, the Pentagon authorized a new play. Strike first, ask questions, never. No warning shots, no negotiations. If intelligence identified a launch signature or targeting sequence, even before anything left the rails, it was fair game. Fifth, and most quietly, they made it personal. Key Houthi operators believed to be linked to the drone shootone were added to a high-value target list. Mobile teams started watching comms. Signals intelligence started geo-fencing. The strike had done its job. But now the real operation had begun. So now the question becomes, was it enough? The drone was avenged, the launch site leveled, protocols updated. But in the bigger picture, did it change anything? The Red Sea is still a war zone. Shipping routes are still threatened. And the Houthis, they're bruised, but not buried.
What's changed is posture.
The US is no longer reacting.
It's hunting.
The Eisenhower and Truman strike groups are now part of a larger chessboard. Not just defending sea lanes, but defining them. Every drone strike going forward gets watched. Every launch site gets mapped. Every false radar ping might get answered with steel. But this raises a bigger question, and it's for you, the viewer. If you were in command that night, would you have stopped after one strike, or would you have doubled down to erase the entire network? Let us know in the comments.
Be honest. Be bold.
There's no wrong take, just strategy. Because these aren't just military decisions anymore. They're political, economic, global. Every container ship passing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait now sails under the shadow of one drone and the promise of 50 missiles in reply. What happens next? That depends on who blinks first. The Houthis took out one drone. What they got in return? A swarm of missiles, shredded launch sites, and a very loud silence from the US government.
But here's the thing. This ain't over.
Because that MQ-9 wasn't just a drone.
It was a signal.
A signal that the rules have changed. And that the US Navy isn't here to absorb punches anymore. It's here to end threats before they begin. The Red Sea is now more than just a hotspot. It's a live test zone for modern warfare. ISR drones, smart munitions, electronic jamming, counter-strike doctrine. And the next engagement, it's probably already loading on a carrier deck right now because every Houthi radar that blinks could be its last. Every drone launch might be the start of a 24-hour bombing cycle, and the next shot they fire might not miss.
So, here's your final question.
Do you think that the US should keep responding strike for strike, or is it time to escalate and shut it all down?
Let us know in the comments. We read everyone.
And if you found this breakdown intense, eye-opening, or just flat-out wild, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell so you never miss what comes next.
Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Stay safe.